Okay, guys, today I'm going to go over some of the things that I do that are probably not what they'd tell you to do if you took a stained glass class anywhere. First of all, I use regular paper to make my patterns. Second of all, I just use a glue stick to glue it down. You see it here. I've got this piece ready to be glued onto this piece of glass that I'm using. I will just set it on here, get it straightened out like so. And then this is another tool that I use. This one happens to be, I believe, a wallpaper border roller, or you're supposed to put a paintbrush on it. I don't put a paintbrush on it. I use this to smooth out my patterns. I also have a pastry roller. Yes, you heard right, a pastry roller. Right here it is, my pastry roller that I use for bigger things when I'm laying out. I do have quite a few of the traditional stained glass tools as well. You can see here my breakers, my glazing pliers, my lead pliers, my running pliers. Over here, this is actually a tile nipper, this blue one. You can buy it at any hardware store or big box store, whatnot. Yes, that is what you think it is. That's one of those hand and forearm exercisers. I use this while I'm giving my stuff a few minutes to set up. Kind of keeps me busy a little bit. That's a traditional stained glass square right there. My glazing hammer. I also have a normal hammer hanging there, you can see. I've got some old cutting boards that I inherited from my wife. I like to use these for several things. The real thin ones, like this one, it's almost paper thin. I use it for after I've got a pattern ready to cut, I'll cut on that. I've got a little thicker one back there. You can't really see it. That one I use actually to cut my glass on. Now a lot of guys, they'll tell you got to buy this whole system or a cutting mat and that. You know, I don't cut on a cutting mat. I never have. I did use rags. There's a pile of rags right next to my other bench here. I'll use rags to cut on. I use rags for everything as well. You don't need to spend a lot of money, especially on the specialized tools. This is my glass cutter. This one I did spend a little bit of money on. One of my glass cutters. This is another one. Because you have to have a fairly decent glass cutter. Sorted X-Acto knives for cutting patterns and whatnot. Replacement blades. There's a little itty bitty tape measure there. I've got a 25 footer over here. Some hand rasps. That's a roll of lead cane. That's just assorted pliers and a chisel. The chisel I actually use, I get a lot of reclaimed glass. I use that chisel to get the old glazing compound and stuff off the glass. I also use it to clean my grinder. A big grinder over here. I've got this little hobby. There's my glass of tea. Got this little hobby vise thing. I use it for smaller projects that I do. It's got a magnifying glass that I hardly ever use. I usually take it off. But these here, I've used that hobby vise to build these little dragonfly keys and butterfly keys. It just lets me mock things up and then go hands-free with my soldering iron. Now my soldering iron is probably a mid-level soldering iron. I think I bought this one at Hobby Lobby. The first one I bought was the cheapest one you could buy, and I used it for 3 years before it absolutely burned up. I mean, it burnt the wires inside the handle and everything. This one's adjustable temp. I kind of like it because I run different lead cames. That's a Sol Aluminac block. It helps keep my tip clean and tinned. Over here is this is the one thing that when I started doing glass, I don't know how I ever got by without this thing. This is a foiler. This foils your glass, and it has just been the best thing that ever happened. Now, as you can see, this is a completely different bench. Now, I'm sorry about the mess in my shop here, but I'll kind of do a pan here, starting with the foil roller. The cup behind it is, these are my foiling tools. I have a pair of scissors in there for cutting the foil off the roll once I've got it on. This is actually a sock darner. You put your sock in there, and then you're supposed to, this is to fix holes in socks. I use it for burnishing my foil. Same with this. This is like a pastry roll. Actually, I don't know what this is or where I got it. It's like a small pastry roller or something. I use this for foiling as well. The different fids for foiling. This is actually a scrapbooking bone folder, they call it. It's plastic. Why they call it bone, I don't know. Probably because it's white. But it's got a very fine edge on it. Not quite knife-like, and very pointed. And it'll get in places that this fid will not. And I do a lot of goofy cuts myself, so that's why I use that. This is to adjust the temperature on my soldering iron. And then, of course, I have another X-Acto knife over here because sometimes the foil doesn't lay on the piece of glass like you want it. A pair of wire cutters there, just standard wire cutters. I play guitar, and my son plays guitar and bass and everything, so all of our used strings, I use the used strings for things like I'll reinforce a piece of glass that I've made with them. I use them for hangers, as you can see on this piece here. I don't know how well you can see that because of the way the sun is. But I also used it for the tail of Ferdinand the Bull there. Okay, we're going to keep going along. This is just, this bench is just one of those kind of cheapies that you can get at Harbor Freight or anywhere, woodworking bench. It's got 4 drawers in it and then a space underneath. This is my layout workboard. You can see that I've got a lifted 1x here nailed to it, and it's square. Right here's my square corner. This was just an old tabletop or something. I don't remember what I nailed this to. And then my lead cane stretcher screwed right to it. And I've got some dogs in the bench here to hold it straight. And when I have to use the lead cane, I come over here and I just put another clamp right in this area. Clamp it in place. Okay. Here comes one of my other benches. This is my layout bench. This is where I sit and do all my patterns. And once my patterns are cut and ready to go, then I lay them out on the glass and cut them there. There's my glass down below. Keep a little bottle of Windex there. And I've already showed you the tools there. My assorted scissors, I also have colored pencils and pens and things up here that I use when I'm making, when I just trying to decide what colors that I want to use on a particular piece. Both of these this bench and the next one are both lighted. You can see that. And to the last bench, pardon the mess again, this is my one pile of rags. This is my grinding bench. I've got some files back there, some little itty bitty diamond files, hand files. I'll try and zoom in on those so you can kind of get a look at them. Again, those were just Harbor Freight, but they work great for getting in places that my other grinders won't. And I have two grinders that I use. I have this one. I believe this was a Hobby Lobby maybe purchase. I don't remember, but I also have this handy little foot pedal from Harbor Freight that I've got hooked up to this. Can you hear that? And I can adjust the speed through that foot pedal and the off and on it as well. I also use a little rotary tool for grinding. Right there it is. With, of course, you know, with glass, everything's diamond grinders and everything. That needs washed, but that's my apron so I don't get covered in glass dust, and a hat so my hair doesn't get full of it. The rest of the shop is, well, my stereo system. That's a turntable that's covered up. I never use that while I'm grinding or cutting because I don't want the glass flying around. Just a little AM FM receiver, some speakers, because a person's got to have some tunes while you're working. This is air conditioned, and these are my, when I'm done messing with the glass and need to take a little break, blow off a little stress, a couple of guitars. That dulcimer my dad actually made. Never figured out how to play it. Maybe one of these days I will. But that's about it. Thank you for watching.